Welcome back to the podcast. I am super excited. Today, I have my first guest on the podcast, and I can't wait for you guys to hear all about Kim's new book, Radical Intuition. It's a life changer. It's a game changer. It's a super interesting look at intuition and how we can use it and really actively use it in our lives, which I know you guys are always looking for ways to use tools to create more of what you want. So when this opportunity presented itself, I was all in and said, yes, this is something that all of you need to hear about, because it gave me so many aha moments as I read the book that it was time to have Kim on and hear more from her. So Kim, I would love for you to introduce yourself to us. Tell me how you got to right here, right now, and how this became your life's work.
Yeah, happy to, Jill. Thanks so much for having me on and for all the great work that you do. It's really an honor to be here and talk about intuition because it's my life's passion. I have been obsessed with intuition since I was a child, and I've really spent most of my life trying to explore it and understand it in a real no-nonsense way. It came to me early on that intuition is a natural part of our being and who we are. And at a very young age, I had some experiences that I really wanted to work out and understand. So it set me on this path of discovery that I think many of us are on, where we really have to find our place in the world and the higher meaning behind it all, because there are these threads and these hints and these signs from life that there's something more than we're taught every day. So, I started out my path as an artist and a designer and ended up in technology. So I spent 20 years working in tech and as really working all around the world with some of the biggest technology companies. And I wrote my first book on intuition actually 15 years ago. And it's only now through working with these technology companies and these innovators when I start hearing them talk about intuition, right? I'm sitting with super smart people at hearing them talk about how important intuition is and how it's going to become the new holy grail in the way we live. And it really moved me to write this book and talk about the sort of silent ways that intuition is weaving its way into our lives and culture beyond even the ways that we're typically associated with it, with our personal growth and spiritual development.
It's amazing. I will say that it had sparked quite a conversation in my household, because I have an engineering student in her final term, right? And engineering, very black and white. They do things a certain way. And I'm like, this book is trying to tie how technology and all these things need intuition as you guys are, developing what you're developing. And she's like, oh, so I'm like, you'll be reading the book next.
Yes, yes, yes. I love that. I love that.
Because it's so
And that,
important.
yeah, because I mean, I think it's really, not your usual suspects that with intuition with this book. I have people who are programmers and game designers and doctors and everyone from this really full spectrum coming together behind this idea of intuition, talking about how it really is the secret sauce to greatness and happiness and all of these things that we want, whether it's having this career and creating new things for the world, or whether it's just being happy and reconnecting with ourself and our center. Intuition really is at the core of all of it.
I think that's what I loved the most, was this book really talked about the fact that, intuition had this kind of stigma of being that more spiritual thing, but it comes right down to, for whatever you want to acquire in your life or create or do or connect with, intuition is there and leading you every step of the way. And then I think it's brilliant how you talk about happiness is the result of using these intuitive feelings that we're having. So there's so many things I want to get into today, because I love the archetypes. I loved all of that. So we'll get to that. The book is so usable, which directly aligns with what I'm always talking about is there's tools in there to enhance your intuition. Like you guys, this book, you'll see, look at all my little notes I made. And I highlighted, because that's how many good things there were in there. But what I would like you to start with is talking about what intuition is, because I think there's some misconceptions actually about what intuition actually is. And I think that's where we need to start, because the way you describe it, I've used my intuition for a long time, but it means so much more to me when I read how you described it. So if you would start there for us, that'd be amazing.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So first of all, I just want to say that I think you're not alone. I think most of us have spent our lives using our intuition sort of intuitively or unconsciously. It just happens and we use it, but we're not actually sure how it came to us or how it's all working, right? So really I wrote this book to help us all to become more conscious of our intuition so that we can develop it and open up to it and have more of it. So understanding what intuition is at the core in a really, like, again, no nonsense way. I understand it really is the complementary cognitive function to our intellect. We have two sides of our brain, two hemispheres of our brain, and they work in different ways to support each other. We've spent, as a community, as a people, we have spent decades, centuries developing one side of our mind. We're getting really smart. We know um, to learn and teach in all of these knowledge systems, but we've sort of forgotten about this other side of learning that's creative, that's intuitive. And we have we need more of the arts, of course, and we need more of this intuitive training for it's actually ways for us to actually solve problems. It's not just for the arts, there's so much more to it. So understanding it as a complementary form of knowledge acquisition is so important, and then realizing that everyone has it and everyone can get better at it, right? Not everyone. My husband is a cybersecurity like technical guy, and he's the least intuitive person in the world. So he said when I met him, and now I catch him using his intuition all the time. So it's really wonderful when you see people who think, I don't know about this intuition business, and then they experience it, and they're like, holy, that is real. That is something. And that's the thing. When you have that aha moment, when your intuition touches you for the first time, you realize that there's something to that. You have that extraordinary insight or epiphany or creative idea that just hits you. Like, that's your intuition. And becoming aware of that and then learning to trust it is so important.
Yeah, well, I will tell you that my kids now and my husband always go, like, I'll have a hidden intuition and I'll tell them, no, we're not doing that because, and I won't have a because I just have a feeling. And they're like, and they used to ignore me, but now they go, oh, mom has a feeling. I guess we're not doing that.
Mm.
We're going to do this because they've learned to trust it. Like I've learned to trust it because the more you trust it, the better you get at using it, right? So now it's like, well, mom has a feeling. I guess this is the way it's going to be. But it wasn't always like that. But I loved in the book how you described like intuition comes first, right? And I'd like
Mm.
you to dive into that a little bit is like the intuitive hit comes first before the thought. And I really loved how that differentiated between your brain and intuition, right? And kind of like the superconscious giving you the thought. So if you could touch on that a little bit and explain that, I think that that will help so many people recognize it even more as they move along.
Absolutely. And knowing that, intuition is, I think Einstein was the person who said it, that, intuition is a sacred gift and the mind should be its faithful servant. And knowing that our intuition first, it comes fastest before our mind comes in and tries to reason our way out of it. Like, how many times have you had like just an idea that came out of nowhere and then your mind's like, no, 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 that's crazy. And then meanwhile, something happens. You're like, oh, I wish I would have listened to that. Right. That's how intuition works. It sneaks in that very first moment before our thoughts have a chance to try and figure things out. Because that's the beauty of intuition. It comes from above. We just simply receive it. It's so easy. It's not something that we have to work hard to figure out. So we want to set aside this other side of our thinking process, this rational, overly thinking sort of side of our brain that really drowns out our intuition. So that's the problem so many of us have because we're busy, we're running around, we're on our phones all the time. We're constantly in this place of overthinking in this mind-based culture that there's no time and no space for those little intuitive insights and nudges to come through in a meaningful way. So really opening up space and time in our life, pausing, being in the moment really gives us an opportunity for those first impressions, those first insights to pop into our head, and then for us to actually acknowledge them before our mind takes over and disregards them and we go on our way and we totally miss something that could be there for us and be really helpful.
Yeah. Well, I think that whole mind gets in the way thing, it happens so fast. So you don't even recognize that it
Yep.
happens. And it's starting to be aware of that, right? It's all of those, I call them like belief boulders because it's stuff from the past that is not relevant here, but our brain accesses it. So then it stops us from doing something. What I loved in the book was you recommended actually kind of journaling your intuitive insight that you had. And it's, to me, it's a way of like proving it to yourself that this is happening, this is real. I need to listen to more of this. And I recognize that's one of the ways I think that you kind of recommend that you enhance your intuition. And then creating space, right? Is another
Mhm.
way. Is there something else that the listeners can do to tap into their intuition more? Or not even tap in, it's always there. I guess hear it more, listen to it more.
Yeah, and it's something that it takes time. It takes, it really is kind of creating a culture of intuition in your life is what we want to do. Making that space, allowing those insights to come in that gap between your crazy thoughts running around, and then really nurturing that and pulling those insights out and providing opportunities for them to come into the world, because intuition wants to actualize. That's the whole point. It wants to move us. It wants us to create positive change and fulfill our potential and all these wonderful things that we also want. Our intuition is there to support it. So you have the same goals. So we want to allow space for the intuition to come in, but then I always say intuition is a two-part process. We have to recognize it, but then we have to follow it. So it's important for us to journal, like you said. It's important for us to receive, but the most important thing is that we build trust, because in order to follow it, we have to trust it. So that's one of the reasons why the journal is such a great idea. If you, once you write these things down, and the thing about intuition is it's kind of one of those things that's usually better in hindsight. At the time, you're like, well, I'm not sure. I think I have this feeling, but you don't really know until time passes and you look back like, oh yeah, I was totally right about that, right? So keeping a journal is a great way to build validation. And that's the most important thing, is that you start to see how right you are. And yeah, like you said with your family, like I'm sure things happened that made everyone realize that we need to listen to mom because we didn't listen to you once. And how did that turn out? Right. So that's sort of how intuition is. You can learn from the mistakes, you can learn from the hits, and ultimately you're building trust. So any kind of exercise or activities that you can do with yourself to build that trust. I used to do, when I was developing my intuition, I would just make up little exercises. I get up in the morning, I'd be like, okay, I'd be like, just what is the first insight for today of something that might come up in my day? Like maybe I'll just think of the color red, and then I'll get to work and everyone will have red on that day. You know how things like that happen, right? So just creating little exercises, and I have a ton of those things in my book and in my courses that you can do every day just to start developing that relationship with that sort of higher self, so that you realize that there's a real dynamic thing happening and that you're participating in this form of higher awareness, and it's there for you at all times. So just continuing to bring it into your life in new ways so that you trust it and then use it. It's just like everything else. You don't want to get rusty, just stay in that space, and it helps you to just live 24/7 with this kind of insightfulness that becomes a lifestyle.
I love how you spoke about like making a culture of intuition, and it does become a lifestyle. And I can see where I was using it. And now, after reading your book, how much more I can be using it. And then also, what are the questions I need to ask my kids when they're making decisions so that they start to use it more? Because I know they use it more than us. So I can really see the tools. I was having fun. Are they called insight cards on your website? With those,
Yeah.
so fun. You guys have to go to our website and check it out. So a card pops up, and then you go with what your first feeling or thought was, and you write it down, and then you explore it a little bit more. And I was shocked by the question I asked and then the answers I got. And now I'm like, oh, something is very clear that wasn't clear to me before about it's a program I'm developing. And I'm like, that's the basis. Okay. And it all came from looking at this card and just checking in with myself, which is, I think, what we forget to do. We're so used to going to the thinking mind to help sort it out. And there's no answer there, right? Like there isn't. So you have to recognize that you have another part of yourself that will provide you with the answers or the next step or what feels right next for you, right? And it's just beginning to use it more, because that is not where we naturally go, right? I guess some people
Mhm.
do, but a lot of us, that's not really how we're molded through our life to, to think, is to use these two sides of yourself to figure out what is next. Okay, we got to dive into the 4 archetypes, because of course I read about the archetypes, that I chose what I thought I was, and then I was kind of what I thought I was, but I wasn't totally. And then when I read them, I was blown away by what they meant, how much more it compelled me to want to use my intuition more when I understood what it meant. So, can you kind of briefly share about the four archetypes? Because I think it sheds light on the different ways that we receive
Mhm.
intuition, right? Because everybody's a little bit different. I recognize that you say that we can have all four of them and we should use all four. And there's one that's a little stronger for me, and then the other ones kind of sit closer together. But I can definitely see where I need to tap into the other ones more and where I need to use the
Mhm.
main one more. But because I wrote it down, I was a sage and then a visionary.
I was gonna
And
say I would put you in a visionary for sure, with all your creative energy and all the ideas that you have.
yeah. And so that one was one I thought. And then the sage popped up and I'm like, what? But then when I read it, I'm like, oh, that's for sure it. I think I just fit in this kind of creative role more. But when I look at my whole life, that's definitely where it was. So if you can kind of give the listeners an idea of the four archetypes, and then you guys got to get the book because you just got to read more into it. But if you can let everybody know what they are, I think you'll understand how your intuitiveness comes to you in different ways.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to talk about that because it really is sort of a new way of reimagining intuition with these archetypes. And I spent a lot of time on them. Almost 10 years it took me to write this book because I really, really wanted to understand um, and make clear to people the different ways that intuition can touch us. So they're really essentially the archetypes refer to the four pathways that intuition comes to us there, and you can align with one pathway more than another. We're all our own unique blend of these all four pathways. So we have us all have our unique little soup or sauce of intuition that creates our own personal intuitive language. But in my book I have this assessment where you can take, like Joe was talking about, where you can take a little quiz and figure out which areas you're strongest at and which pathways are most open. And the pathways really boil down to the age old, very simple, concrete ideas of human interaction with the world, which is body, mind, heart, and spirit. And it's the tried and true way of understanding the way that we interact with our reality when we're in the physical world. And it's largely based on Carl Jung's interpretation of the four cognitive functions. And if you've worked with the Myers-Briggs, you would have seen some of that stuff. Who was a huge, by the way, a huge fan of intuition, advocate for intuition, Carl Jung. So I really liked this way of understanding it because it explains why some people, when they're working with their intuition, will get like a gut feeling. Other people will just have knowing. Other people will have like a calling or feel moved or inspired or creative ideas. And other people will have these transcendental experiences with God and the universe and spiritual experiences that are amazing and otherworldly. And so there's all of these different ways that our intuition can touch us. And so I created the four archetypes to kind of understand the basic ways. The archetype of the healer is focused on the body's intuition, the people who have a natural affinity to connecting with their bodies and healing and listening to the wisdom of their bodies. And then the sage is someone who has the natural connection with the mind, the wise ones, right? The people who understand how to use their inner guidance naturally and how to have those first impressions and recognize that the sort of wisdom that comes from within in every moment. And then the visionary is the archetype. It's related to the heart because it's our passions and what moves us to create and build a better world and expand and transform and all of this beautiful energy that flows from within us out into the world. And then the fourth archetype is the mystic because that's the archetype of what we might think of with traditional intuition, where we're connecting with God and the universe, whatever word you use for the source of human existence, that higher realm and the metaphysical realities. Our intuition is our connection to that. Yogananda said that intuition is the soul's power of knowing God. So that's the highest, most profound expression of intuition, is our connection with our creator, with life itself. But it also manifests in all of these other ways in our daily life in very practical ways to help us bring that energy, that higher energy of change and good stuff into the world so that we all can live better lives.
You like the next thing I was going to ask you is why is this so important for people? And you just answered it. It's just to live a better life. And that was really the theme through the whole book, was like to be happy, to be able to create more of what you want, to fulfill your purpose, right? The call of your soul, to like whatever you feel drawn to do is this thing you should be doing. and you can use your intuition to help you get there. In fact, your intuition will likely be better than your thinking mind in the journey and the process. But it's like, to me, when I think about it, is, and the way you describe it is, it's this massive tool that we're not using. Like,
Absolutely. Yep. And I can't believe it. Honestly, Jill, like sometimes I like look back and I can't believe it. Now that intuition has proved itself so much to me, and I've worked with so many people at Intuition Lab, just seeing people who've never used their intuition before, just pick it up like that. And I think, oh my gosh, like, is this like the biggest crime against humanity? Is that we've been tricked into thinking that this wasn't real. It's a huge part of us. We've been so conditioned by our cultures and the world around us that it can't be trusted, even if it does exist. I mean, this is so underutilized. There's so much potential. It's just the beginning. The things that we're doing right now is we're just scratching the surface. We know there's so much of our mind that we're not using, and there's so much higher that we can go doing this. So I'm so excited to see in the coming decades, now that intuition's finally starting to get some momentum and people are taking it seriously in all walks of life. I'm so excited to see, what it can bring to the world.
well, and I think your work really, lays the pathway for that. Because as I read this book, like, obviously I knew intuition was aligned with what I do, but as I read it, I'm like, and I'm a believer of it, but I'm like, this really shows people why it's there, how it exists, how it shows up in their life. The fact that you break it down into 4 archetypes, into, there's an intuitive process that you follow, you guys, that she has explained in detail in the book, to the understanding of what intuition feels like and how you know when it's happening. It just allows you to understand that intuition is more of a process than you thought it to be, right? You just thought it was maybe this intuitive hit. No, there's a whole kind of journey and process with it
Yeah.
that makes it very usable. And then what you do so brilliantly is, like I said, is all the tools of how to enhance your intuition in the different archetypes, how to make sure you're using it more. Like, what you provide in this book is going to allow people to use it more. It's not just a book about intuition and why it would be important to use. You literally
Yes.
give, like, step by step by step, how to tap into it more, how to be more aware of it, how to know when you're using it, how to know when you're not using it,
Yes.
not to feel bad when you messed up and didn't use it.
Yes. So true.
Like, learn from your lesson and then proceed on, right? Is what it
I love
really
that.
says. But what I loved was when you talk about in the book, a lot of, when you get something and you can't decide if it's intuition or not, right? Or your thinking mind, or what
Mm,
is, that the idea of, does it feel right? That's the question you
mm,
ask. And I thought that that was so powerful. So maybe you can kind of build a more of a conversation around that. But that was so powerful for me to understand, if there's a check-in for me right there. Does this
mhm,
feel right? It doesn't have to make sense,
mhm.
but does it feel right?
Exactly. And that's the most important part. When you start to constantly, like you said, check in with yourself, with everything you do, with all of the decisions you make. How does this feel? Right. And intuition is what's so wonderful about it when you really start to get close to it and know it. It's not just a feeling, it's a knowing feeling. And that's why I think it's so special about it, because it's really about when your heart and your mind have this unified experience. It is a knowing feeling. It's a feeling, but it's also a knowing. You know that this feeling is real, and it's hard to explain until you're actually in that place. It's not a decision that you're making from outside of yourself in your mind, trying to rationalize or making a pros and cons list. It's this inner knowing, this inner feeling of unity in action and direction. And that's really what gets you into the flow of life, the flow of your life that's ideal for you, because this knowing feeling is a sign of alignment, right? Of this alignment within yourself, of all of your parts knowing that this direction is right for you. And that really touches on the book. I wrote this book to be a do book, not just a reading book. I wanted people to experience intuition for themselves. I could sit here and talk all day long about how great it is, intuition is. I will, because I love it and I'm so passionate about it. But until you go out and experience it like you have, like for yourself, and you have those aha moments and you have those feelings that are like, yeah, I know, I don't know why, but I'm just not going to do that. And it's okay to get comfortable saying, I don't know why, but I'm going to make this decision based on this feeling within me. And it's totally okay. You have to give yourself permission to not have the reasons if you have that feeling. And that's something I want everyone to take away from the book more than anything. I just want people to recognize their own intuition, be able to recognize it, and then give themselves permission to follow it, even if their mind, their rational mind, doesn't back it up.
That is the gold right there, because we are so used to having that moment of, if we tell somebody no, or we say we're not going to do it or whatever, that we have to justify it.
Yes.
And that's the thing about intuition is you're right. You don't necessarily know why you said no, or why you said it has to be a certain way, or why you're holding kind of firmly in the sand about whatever.
Hmm.
And so it's hard not to have that justification until you get down the road and you're like, oh, that's why that happened. Like sometimes you can see it.
Yes.
Or if you get the hit of intuition and you don't do it, and then you look back and you're like, yep,
You're like, don't. Famous last words. I didn't listen to my intuition.
I have got more and more comfortable not explaining it, just saying, yep, nope, this is it's, and it is, it's that knowing feeling of, regardless, this is the path that we're going. And I know this to be true, and I can't explain why I know it to be true, but we are doing this until I feel like we're done doing it. So I think that that's the gold is you don't need permission, like, and you don't have to look for somebody else to give you permission. If you know it to be true, you use it. And the more you use it, the more you your intuition comes to you, I think, is really what happens, right? What do you want the listeners to know about themselves and their intuition?
Well, first of all, that everybody has it. You have it, I have it. Everybody that's ever lived on this planet has it. All life really has it. You know, to me, intuition is the universal language. It's the language that we connect with life itself. We can use it to connect with our pets, right? With people who we don't know, with people who are separated from time and space from us, far away. We know through, through quantum physics that this is becoming a real new way of understanding intuition, is a kind of quantum thinking, that we have this ability within us. Like the thinking side of our brain is sort of the Newtonian physics of thinking. Like it's process, cause and effect, up and down. But then when you think about intuitive thinking, now we're in the realm of the mysterious and the quantum way of experiencing impossible things, like entanglement and things that are not anywhere following the laws of physics. And that's why 200 years ago we couldn't have this conversation about intuition right now, because it just seemed impossible. There's no way that two people, like if you just thought of your friend and they called on the phone or something, like there's no way that could actually happen. That's impossible. But now we know that in physics that's actually possible. So why can't it be possible in the way we think? So I think that just knowing and believing and trusting that with time will make this all, I think, much more palatable for us when we have more scientific understanding of the human mind. But for now, just stepping back from that old school understanding of intuition is something that's just woo. And we need to have our crystal balls out or something to access it. No, it's just and that's fine. I've got nothing against all that stuff. But if you don't need it, they're just tools. We're made with it inside us. We don't need any tools to use it. And just knowing, stepping back from some of those old school sort of prejudice against intuition, and realizing and opening your mind to the fact that it's something for you, to support you, and exploring it and being open to it without fear is really a huge step in all of our growth and transformation as we move into the future.
I love it. Yeah, it's a huge step in growth. That's just it. So if you're listening to this and you feel like there's something you need to shift in your life, or it's just not, like, start using your intuition. Start
Yes.
listening to the inner promptings. Start asking even the questions. The question you had when you wake up in the morning is, what's my insight for today? And just listen to what that is, and then start seeing how it shows up, right? Same as using one of the insight cards. Go to our website, do that. I asked a specific question about a membership group I want to start, and the card popped up, and then it was, here's the basis of it, right? And I'm like, that's what I needed, because I was a little lost on the intuitive prompting came for this membership group, and then I'm like, okay, that's fine. What's next?
Now what? Yeah.
So it's just a matter of start using it. Okay, one final question, then we'll get into where everyone can find you, where the book is, why they all need to get it. What does intuition mean to you?
Well, I always say that, I have the most important job in the world. And people laugh. They're like, what? But for me, I think intuition is the most important part of life because it is that very foundation to our core, to our truth, to our higher power within us. And once we get that intuitive connection strong and right, all of our life falls into place. Like it really is that foundation. So for me, it's been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. And the more that I've used it in my life and the more that I've trusted, the better my life has gotten. So, I really see that parallel in my own life. I am walking this path with you. This is my journey. This book is my journey. I'm just sharing the things that I've learned through my own life. And I'm just so happy to have this opportunity to shout it out from the rooftops. And I hope that it'll bring some change and help people.
I got goosebumps when you talked about that. Beautiful, right? You're fulfilling your purpose. You were called to share this. And I'm just so grateful that we got connected, because then now all of these listeners get to experience some of what I read in the book. And I'm hoping they will go to your website, read the book. So can you share with everybody where to connect with you best, how to get the book, all the things, because I know that they're going to want to do that.
Absolutely. And if you want to hop over to my website, kimchestney.com, Chestney. And I have a free Wake Up Your Intuition guide. If you can get that now, and it really has some of the little touches on some of the things we talked about today, but also gives you some practices that you can just start doing right now to start opening up your intuition and understanding it and kind of warming up to it. You can also check out my school Intuition Lab, where we have online courses. We do live workshops. You can work with me live to develop your intuition and all kind of fun stuff like that at intuition-lab.com.
Awesome. And where do they get the book?
Of course, the book, you can get that anywhere, online, anywhere, Amazon, Walmart, Target, you name it.
You can find it. Okay. Well, this has been amazing. We could keep talking forever. So maybe we'll have to do a part 2. But
yes.
Definitely go and check her out, you guys. Get on her email list. I have the guide. It's amazing too. Get the book and start using your intuition more. If this is your message, you guys, is if you're listening to this, it's because you need to start doing this more. So I definitely encourage you to begin to be more aware of how your intuition is showing up, and then trust it. Listen to it. Move through it. Give yourself permission to recognize that it's as important as your thinking mind, if not more important than your thinking mind, because it is there to create your happiness and to help you fulfill your purpose. If there's anything I learned from the book, it is that. And I will tell you, I will be listening to mine more than I ever have before, using the tools she's given me to enhance it even more. So thank you so much for being here. I look forward to this friendship we're creating. I look forward to watching what you're going to do next. And I look forward to seeing how this continues to make an impact on the world.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Jill. I'm looking forward to it too. I love all the stuff you have going on. So this has been a lot of fun.
Great. Thank you.
Take care.